Okay, good good afternoon everybody. Okay, I'm going to explain. This is the second part. So, I was in the precinct in Italy and I was handcuffed. And the thing was, it was an exercise. It was an exercise to know about what to do in a situation when you're in a precinct in a foreign country. So they said to me, "Do you know Michael Vito Milazzo Jr.?" See, I thought this was just an exercise, ladies and gentlemen. This is what I was told. It's an exercise. It's not an exercise. It wasn't an exercise. No. It was not an exercise, ladies and gentlemen. They wanted me to start answering questions about Italian governmental events. And just like Simon Wilson, with this being kicked off the airline, I had to say nothing. I had to be quiet. I thought that they were doing this exercise as like a type of experiment, not an experiment, but an exercise for training purposes. So what ended up happening was I was put in handcuffs. They asked me so many questions. I couldn't answer the questions because I didn't have the answers. I didn't know who Michael Vito Milazzo Jr. was. I had no idea he was a relative of mine. Nobody said anything to me. So, in the Vatican Library, in order for you to get written permission or proof, you have to sign documents. That's in college. You have to be a doctor, meaning you have to have a PhD. You can be a student and be in the undergraduate or graduate program and the Vatican has their own version of college or university for priests and everybody else. Just like the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian has a university or a college. It's all similar in nature. So, when I went there, the captain said to me, "You remind me of Michael Vito Milazzo Jr." So I thought this was a training, an exercise, to teach you, but it wasn't. They really had me in handcuffs. It wasn't a joke. Because they started asking me and grilling me on questions on things that when I join an organization, I'm not allowed to answer questions. So, one thing I want to explain. They did not list me as a CIA agent, meaning that I found out after this whole thing with my workers' comp case. I was told by President Trump and his staff, and President Biden and his staff, and half of those people in the Nassau County and New York City Police Department, you are labeled as a federal agent. This is after the fact. So when I was in Italy, this was in the 2000s, 2010, 2011 time. This is in that time. This is in that era when I was in Princeton. So that's what I have to tell you. So there was that name that was given to me. The second name that was given to me in the United Kingdom was John Edward Curfew. John Edward Curfew, yet again, in handcuffs, an exercise, a training. The same thing. Been sent multiple questions. The funny thing is, which is hilarious, Andrew Tate's lawyer, Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate have friends that know about this law stuff and criminal matter in Europe, and they all found it to be quite amusing. Meaning it was funny, it was hilarious. But to be seriously honest with you, just like Andrew and Tristan Tate, I could have been in that instance where they did a video where it was not a joke, where you're put in prison and you're working out in the gym. I could have been like that. I could have been like Matt Cox or Jordan Belfort. I couldn't talk about stuff at New York Life or the FDNY or the New York City Police Department. I couldn't talk about stuff. My mom mentioned FBI has for psychology and psychiatry and etc. They have an internship. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to admit to you, besides the AmeriCorps, I did something like that internship. But it wasn't for the FBI, it was for one of the other organizations that deals with guns and things related to that nature. And my relative Charlie, who lives upstairs, when I was a teenager and adulthood, when I got licensed, I got a carrying license. I don't have the gun on me right now, ladies and gentlemen, at my parents' house. I had to hand it over to the proper authorities. And that's something that I want to explain about my workers' comp case. So, March 1st, 2018, I fell and hurt myself. I later found out there was a PCR report from the police department. They put hands on 2 or 3 police officers at the BJ's in Westbury. And there was multiple crimes that happened with BJ's and Instacart and all of these companies related. It was all affiliated with Advantage Sales and Marketing. All affiliated. And that's what I have to say. All this stuff that happened with me, it could happen to anybody like you. It could happen. I met a guy in Toyota on that borderline of Hempstead and Garden City. His cousin, it happened to him, except he was in except it wasn't him. His cousin relative had one of those long bars that went through his shoulder. Well, that case, ladies and gentlemen, I was there when that happened. I couldn't talk about it. I let him do the talking. But I was there. I was a witness. I was a witness to a lot of cases that have to do with that matter. That's not in workers' comp is incorrect. There were things that were in workers' comp, and there were things that were outside of workers' comp that has to do with injury law. So Mr. Spector and Mr. Spector's cousin, Michael Spector, and Mr. Gray with an E or Mr. Gray with an A, they explained to me, just like Michael Suvereau said at Parker Wakeman, you got to hold these people responsible. I did stuff now I went past Glen Cove, the volunteer fire department. It says Volunteer Exempts and Benevolent Association. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the volunteer fire departments, there are certain things in my workers' comp case I had to explain, not just in workers' comp. I had to explain outside of court or in the courts that were in injury law. That's a part of the Slater, and Suffman or affiliated firms jurisdiction or jurisprudence. Has to do with their positions. That's what I tried to explain to Adam and Joseph. Why did you have me sign a discovery document or a representation document that I was testifying? These are things that I tried asking Frank, detective from the Nassau County, Frank Ruvolo said, John, they had you listed as an agent. Well, if they had me listed as an agent or anything, and I'm in the AmeriCorp, you got to explain it to Mr. Warsaw. And that's what Mr. Warsaw said to me and said to Stanton, Robert Stanton, and his father and his relatives. You have to let the police talk, because Mr. Warsaw brought this up to me, which I did not know. He said, Mr. Warsaw yelled and screamed, and he says, John, there is no way of you being able to settle the Social Security disability case, because they gotta know who is involved. And Mr. Warsaw said, Mr. Houston has got to give us a phone call, because that paper, it's going to say workers' comp on that Social Security, and if you didn't settle it, they're all connected with each other. And that's when Mr. Warsaw said, you are right to call them up. So Mr. Warsaw's relative, and Christine Cohan, is going to have me call up the workers' comp bureau for the last and final time, and I'm letting this go. This is something I tried explaining to you, Kim Kardashian. Your Skim's case, your Skim company, it's all affiliated with what happened with me, Kim, because Rebecca and Anna from these carriers said somebody applied for you with workers' comp and didn't even say anything to you or me. They said I testified about it. I don't know what I testified about in workers' comp or the injury case, because Michael Suvero, he had to leave the practice at Parker Wakeman. So that's exactly what happened, ladies and gentlemen. That's why, in this matter, I have to be careful what I say and what I do, and I can't miss. And to the Nassau County Police and the Suffolk County Police told me to explain to you guys on this YouTube to begin with. You need to start explaining to Suffolk County, because they're missing funds. There's funds missing. And it's all affiliated not just with Nassau University Medical Center. It's affiliated with this lover's case. This lover's case where somebody is impersonating people like Kim Kardashian and Khloe and Kortney Kardashian and the Jenner people, like the Jenner sisters. Someone was impersonating them. Somebody came to the public. I wasn't even in the public defender's office at the time. I had to speak to Mrs. Katz and Mr. Schmidt and Mrs. Vasquez. These are judges. These are in state and federal court. They're in Hempstead and Mineola and Riverhead, and they're in the Third Circuit Court. They're in Supreme Court. I didn't just do stuff for the public defender's office. I did stuff for the judges. And they wouldn't, people out east in Quag and all these places. If this was my iPhone, they didn't stop calling. The Judiciary Committee called me so many times. Wells Fargo called me so many times. Chase Manhattan Bank called me. J.P. Morgan Chase called me so many times. Even Bank of America called me because they wanted to know who the person was. They wanted John to come into the branch. They wanted to have John with this lawyer do a conference call because they're missing. They said Barclay Bank and some of these other banks, they have their promissory notes affiliated with mortgages, and that I have John and Valerie and many of my friends said this is not a personal promissory note, ladies and gentlemen. This is a business promissory note. That's millions or billions of dollars that has to do with big debt. That's worse than the 2008 incident with mortgage fraud and things related to that. And that's why I'm doing the show, this Uncle John show, to promote the truth. Because they had me listed in the military. And that's what Marie Marie, from one of my relatives from the Grantner family, said they had you listed in the military. They're lying to you. And the police, FBI, and in Central Islip, there's the federal courts there. They need answers, ladies and gentlemen. I can't answer those questions because it's confidential information. It has to do with Hurricane Sandy and all of these things related to HIPAA and the Child Protection Act with YouTube, and the other thing it has to do with, ladies and gentlemen, has to do with the State Attorney General's office and the New York State Secretary of State. Has to do with the FCC and the FTC. Has to do with the SEC, with the commissions. It's all affiliated with my case. And what do? Be accused of a crime I didn't commit? And that's the number one thing, ladies and gentlemen. These people are going to be held liable no matter what. Whether it gets resolved in court or whatever. The president, he's going to have to start answering questions because his own daughter, she's got about 16 or 17 promissory notes that got my credentials, my information. Kortney's yelling at me because she wants me on the plane. I gotta go on the plane to speak to Kortney Kardashian because her sister's driving up a wall. She could be in trouble, and I can't do that to Kortney Kardashian, ladies and gentlemen. It's wrong. So take care, guys. Have a pleasant and wonderful day. Yeah, it's the same thing, Kortney Kardashian, with Ivanka Trump. I gotta do 2 plane flights and start answering questions. So take care, guys. Have a wonderful and beautiful day.